So good morning to our first and welcome to our first webinar as part of our Alma 2022 Roadmap and Themes webinar series. We're today January 18th with the Library Independence theme in the Alma 2022 Roadmap. As it states here, this session is being delivered by myself, Yoel, as well as Moshe Schechter. Moshe coming to us from product management, specializing in, among many other areas, fulfillment, resource sharing, really just about everything. Moshe, do you want to say any words before we officially jump in?
No, I'm just very excited that we can finally talk about this theme that has been worked so hard on for so long.
Yeah, it's been a major project here. Okay, so we're all excited, just like yourself, Moshe. Okay, so this page, which I'm assuming everybody has because from here you registered, I'm going to send it out to everybody in the chat anyway. And it has not only the links to register, but also the accompanying resources. And this is the official page here, link here to the Library Independence theme page, which describes overall what is this whole idea of library independence and the many areas where each library can function as an independent unit within the entire institution. So if there's an institution, for example, as we'll see today in a few moments, with a medical library and a law library and a science library, and the institution wants real separation between those institutions, I wouldn't call it real separation, but independence as we stay here, that is possible. We're going to see that with logos. We'll see that with letters. We'll see it with loans, returns, circulation desks, etc. We're not going to be able to cover everything on this page today. We're going to be covering it in order of what appears here. Some things listed here are not necessarily 2022 developments. However, because they do represent the library independence, they are included here. But without further ado, let's jump in. So I'm going to go into a regular standard January 2022 release. I'm not in any special environment that includes any special developments. This is the regular standard January 2022 release. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the ability to have patron notification letters go out to users separated by library. In other words, if I look at two users I have here, Joseph Caro. So user Joseph Caro, sorry about that. I must have spelled something. Oh, I did spell something wrong there. There we go. User Joseph Caro, if we take a look here, he has items. Let's go to his fulfillment activities. He has items on loan only from the law library. On the other hand, if we look at Isaac Luria, and we go here to the manage fulfillment activities, he has items on loan from the medical library, the agriculture library, and the law library. The new development which we're discussing now is twofold. One is that if the institution wants to have a separate letter per library when doing the borrowing activity letter, for example, or the hold request letter, or the lost loan and overdue letters, the patron notification letters, it's possible to have separate libraries. And that's done, it's possible to have separate letters per library and separate logos. So we have a new configuration here. I'm clicking here on the bottom, the configuration, and we're going to general and to, excuse me, we're going to fulfillment and then to general and to other settings. Again, I'm in configuration, then fulfillment, general, other settings. And inside other settings, we have a new parameter called separate. Let's see exactly what it's called. Separate patron notifications by library. I'm going to put it back to false just for a moment, just to show a comparison of what the previous definitions were. How did it behave previously? So we're going to have something to compare. Because in your institutions that already exist, the default of that new parameter is false because our standard of introducing new developments, not just in what we're talking about today, our standard is that if an institution does nothing, the system will keep working as it was, so there won't be any sudden surprises. If someone wants to take it, it's opt-in. You need to define that as true. So if we go now again to Isaac Luria, who has items from 3 different libraries, and we go to the manage fulfillment activities, and we send him an activity letter, we'll see that it's going to be 1 letter. Let's go into fulfillment, manage patron services, and we'll take Isaac Luria again, and send activity report. Okay, so we'll have something to compare before we make the change. Let's go take a look at that letter. And I happen to have Isaac Luria's email. So we'll go here. I've got all of my patron circulation notifications here. Loading. I must have a lot of patron circulation notifications. Okay, and here we are. That was sent 0 minutes ago, right now. And you can see we have 1 letter for all 3 items. So that's the current behavior so that we have something to compare. Now we're going to come back into Alma and make that change. I'm going to go to configuration, general, excuse me, I did the same mistake last time. Configuration fulfillment, general other settings, and again, we'll go to the new parameter, separate patron notifications by library. We'll define this as true, save. And now let's send a letter again. I'm going to go back, and though it's not necessary, I like to log out and log in after I change one of those parameters. Okay, so we're going to log back in, and let's send that letter again. So let's, same flow, manage patron services. I'm just sending this letter because it's very easy to send. I don't need to start making a hold request and check it in and check it out, etc. But we're going to open up a PowerPoint about this in a moment, which describes exactly which letters this is, all of the configurations, and I'm going to click Send Activity Report. Okay, so now what we're expecting is to get 3 separate letters. And then we're going to show how to make separate logos on each letter. So let's come back here. Let's go patron circulation summary. Okay, there we go. You can see it's 4. Now there are 4 letters here. There's a little 4 there. Let's see. So now we have 1 letter here just for the agriculture library. There's 1 letter to Isaac Luria for the agriculture library. Now we have another letter You can see another letter with the logo, this time for the law library. Then we have another letter, this time for the medical library. Now, we're going to show how we can make separate logos. This is the institution logo that we're looking at here. If I come into Alma, here's my institution logo. That's the same logo we're getting on each of these three letters. Now we're going to show another new development, which includes the option to add different logos. Then we're going to go look at the PowerPoint to sum everything up. I'm just going to go take a look at the chat and see if there were any questions or comments. I don't see any questions or comments there. Okay, so now this is a big one. What we're going to show right now, a big one. This really has been something people have been asking. Moshe, you've probably heard this also pretty much since the beginning of Alma, I think. And there was a way to play around with the XSL and kind of change the logo. It didn't actually change the institution logo, but it gave the option to add an image based on XSL conditions. But now you'll see how easy it is to make a separate logo per library. So first of all, I have already here some logos, and I'm always afraid when I open this up that I'm going to have something I don't want everyone to see, but here we go. So these are the logos I have. Let's look at these with extra large icons. So these are my logos, and I'm going to use this one for the medical library, and I'm going to use this one for the law library, and I'm going to use this one here for the agriculture library. This is a citron. A citron, also called an etrog, and a type of palm branch called a lulav. We're going to use that for the agriculture library. And this is my institution logo already. So let's see how that's done. We're going to go into configuration, then general, then we have a configuration, general, Alma, here it is, user interface and settings, Alma logo and color schemes. We're in Alma logo and color schemes. Now previously, this was only defined on the level of the institution. You see up here it says configuring Alma University. Now it's possible also to configure this on the level of the library. So I'm going to choose the agriculture library, and now I can choose my own logo for the agriculture library, and I'll choose that etrog with a lulav, and we'll save that. So the agriculture library now has that citron fruit in the palm branch. Then we'll do the same for the medical library, and we'll choose a unique logo for the medical library. So again, we're general, user interface settings, Alma logo and color schemes, and we'll choose medical library. And here we've got a picture of a stethoscope, and I think that's the thing that takes the blood pressure, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll take that and save. So now we have a logo for the agriculture and the medical library. Let's do the same for the law library. So we'll come along to the law library now. We'll say configuration general. User interface and settings. And Alma logo color scheme. And law library. And here we've got a gavel right here. And we'll save that. So now we've got separate logos for each of the libraries that Isaac Luria has items on loan for. And I'm going to come in here before we send it. I'm going to delete these four. And let's say delete. Okay. So now this folder is empty. Let's go send a letter back to Alma. And fulfillment managed patron services. And Isaac Luria, go. And send activity report. So now we're expecting to see 3 letters because we have that parameter, separate patron notifications, and we're expecting each of those letters to have its own built-in logo. Notice we didn't play around with the XSL here. It's not some kind of configuration, putting in an if condition or anything. Out of the box, this is how it works. Let's also send to our other patron, Joseph Caro. He's got 1 item on loan, but we'll send him an activity report as well. Let's see, Joseph Ka.
You need to do that.
Oh, that's the barcode, yeah. Like I say, there are no Alma errors, it's only human errors. That was a human error. Okay. And send activity report to Joseph Caro. Okay, let's go take a look at what's going on here. And boom. There we go. You see 4, because we got 3 to Isaac Luria, 1 to Joseph Caro. Let's go open them up. The Gmail simply puts them all into one row here. It aggregates them. Okay, so here, look at that. That's our medical library. Let me make this a little larger in case it's not coming in well on the WebEx. So Joseph, this is to Isaac Luria, Sir, Madam Luria, and that's the logo we did for the medical library. Then he's got another letter with the citron fruit and the palm branch, and that's for the agriculture library. Then we've got the law library, logo and law library, and then we've got the letter to Joseph Caro, who only has 1 item in the law library, a 21st century debate on science and religion to Joseph Caro, and he's got the logo there. Now, let's go look at the PowerPoint to make sure we covered everything. However, I do want to show something else about this. I'm just going to give a little introduction now. The fact that we have separate letters by library is a bigger development than just the fact that patrons get separate letters. Because now there are separate letters, the institution can now make conditions in the XSL for those who are inclined to play around with the formats of the letter via the XSL, because now the letter only has 1 library. Previously, let me show you what we're talking about here. Let's go in and look instead of just talking. Previously, each letter could potentially have 5 or 6 libraries in it. Like now we have the first letter we sent out this morning to Isaac Luria had 3 different libraries in it. So the institution couldn't come and make a condition and say, if the library is law library, then make a reply address or change the logo, change an image or whatever, because there could be several libraries. But now, because we've separated the libraries, we can make conditions in the XSL. Let's see what we're talking about. So I'm going to go to the letters configuration. And we'll go to the borrowing activity letter, which is here, for the channel email, because there's also one for a webhook. And we will edit this. So if I come into the template, now I was playing around with this earlier, so I already have a condition here. We're not going to talk now. Now is not the time to talk about how to play around with the XSL of letters. But suffice to say, let me make this browser larger so everyone can see. Suffice to say, by the way, in the PowerPoint, I've got the same example so you'll all see it. I'm going to uncomment this out, or better yet, I'll comment it that way. So I've got a condition here which says if the name of the library is law library, then put in a message, reply to the law library, blah, 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 blah. In fact, I'm going to put another little space there because I noticed yesterday it wasn't looking nice. Then I have another condition that says if it's the medical library, then have a reply to the medical library in red bold. Then I've got another one here, which is if it's the agriculture library. I think I may need to actually change that paragraph thing that I just put in there, but we'll find out in a minute because when you save, it tells you that. Yep. So I'm just going to stick a little slash in there. Okay, that should make him happy now. And let's save. Again, this isn't the time or place to talk about making XSL conditions. I simply want to point out that because we have separate libraries or separate letters per library, we can now put in a condition, whereas previously we couldn't say if it's library agriculture because one letter had multiple libraries in it. So now let's send that. I'm going to delete this one here just so we got something fresh. Delete, okay. And let's go again, fulfillment managed patron services. Let's take Isaac again. And let's send him a patron activity report. And that should come in a moment. There she is. We got a 3 here. That means there's 3 of them. Great. So now the medical one has its own logo and its own reply to the medical library at Beitar Edu. Then the law library also has its own logo and its own reply to message. And the agriculture library also has the lulav and the etrog and the reply to the agriculture library. Okay, that covers the library independence regarding letters. Let's go take a look at the presentations, which are on the library independence page. Excuse me, the roadmap and themes page right here. And we've got, by the way, there's also videos for these you're welcome to look at later. Let's go take a look at these. So I'm going to start with the logos one. Just we're going to review what we showed here, and then we'll move on to the next topic. And we'll get rid of this. Okay. So we said that there's also movies on this, and we're going to show that it's possible to have separate letter logos per library. And we said we're going to have these logos here. We'll use this for the agriculture, this for the medical. And then we went into configuration, general user interface settings, Alma logo and color scheme. And we were able to choose a library, in this case, the agriculture library. And then we did one for the medical library. We also did one for the law library, which is not in the presentation, but that's fine. Here I did one for the education library in the presentation. Okay, and then we had an example here. In our case, it's Alicia Chen, our famous patron, instead of Isaac Luria. So Alicia here has an item on loan from the medical library and the agriculture library. And Jethro Bodine has only the education library. Then we sent the letter after we defined this parameter, separate patron notifications by library, we defined that to true, and then we sent the letter to the people. And we see that Alicia got 2 letters because we're getting separate letters. And the letter she got had a logo on it for each one. And Jethro Bodine got 1 for the education library. So here's the letter to Alicia Hen with the lulav and etrog for the agriculture library and the stethoscope for the medical library. And Jethro Bodine, because the education library didn't have its own logo, it took the logo from the institution. That's that. Let's just look at the other presentation. For not the logos, but just making the notifications be separate, because that also lists which specific patron notifications we're talking about. So we're talking about the borrowing activity letter, which we just looked at together, the courtesy letter, which says you have the following items on loan, the requests report, the overdue and lost loan notification letter. And then other than that, it's the same types of definitions. However, in slide 14, this is what the code that I put inside the letter, just to point out that because we have 1 library per letter, now we can make XSL conditions on the level of 1 library. Okay, I'm going to stop here before we move on to the next topic, and I'm going to see if there's any questions or comments. And I see someone did send something in the chat, and Moshe answered it, but I'm going.
Yes, so just to refine my answer so that it's accurately understood. The question was about separation of letters for 1 library only. So my answer is referring to the logos. You can define a separate logo only for 1 library and leave the others with the institution logo. So only the library that you define a logo for will override the institution logo. The library that does not have its own logo defined will just use the institution logo. But it is not possible to separate a specific library from the other libraries in terms of having an aggregated letter sent for the other libraries and a separate one for 1. So it's either you set the system to separate all libraries or you aggregate all as it is in the default.
Okay, so if we say that another way, in the example that I showed in the PowerPoint, the education library did not have its own logo. Therefore, it got the logo from the institution level. However, we cannot say the law library and the agriculture library will not have separate letters, but the medical library will. Either we separate all the letters or we don't separate all the letters. Is that correct, Moshe, what I just stated?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Let's go take a look in the chat here. Okay, no other questions. So let's move on now. I think I will again use the PowerPoint just as a general guide. This one here, library independence regarding user and fulfillment activities. Now I want to take a look at some specific examples here. But again, you're all invited to look at this. We're not going to have time now to cover every one of these. Let me close these other presentations. Okay, so now we're talking about some things which already exist, some things which are new. And we've stated here exactly which things are new. The viewing of patron loans restricted by libraries. So we've always had in Alma, ever since day 1, that famous day in the summer of 2012 when Boston College took the leap and became the first library to go live with the leading library services platform. We've always had that you can define that one patron, that a certain patron can only loan from a certain library. And we've always had that staff users can only loan items from a certain library, and that's by permissions on a circulation desk. However, what's new now is that only certain staff can even view loans of other patrons and view patron requests. So we can define, for example, that staff user John Smith can only view someone's loans from the law library, but not from the medical library. And that's for all of these entities, the loans, the requests, the fines and fees, the notes, the blocks, and the attachments. So that's a new one, and that's also part of general privacy restrictions and requirements. So let's jump in and take a look at our samples. And again, we're not going to get to cover everything in here, but we will cover quite a bit. And again, feel free to ask questions as we go. Okay, so I just want to, so we're all on the same page, show the people we've got. So one sample user is Jethro Bodine. And Jethro Bodine is a staff user only for the medical library. He's associated with the medical library. He has a circulation desk operator, circulation desk manager, request operator, and a user manager, all for the medical library. So I'm going to write that down on the side. I'll take this here and I'll say Jethro Bodine, he's associated with the medical library. Then we have another user, another staff user, Ellie Mae Clampett. And let's go see Ellie Mae. So Ellie Mae Clampett, edit, is associated with the law library. She has the same roles as Jethro. However, it's for the law library. Circulation desk operator and manager, request operator, and user manager. So let's put her down. Ellie Mae is associated with the law library. And, okay. That's fine. Next, as far as our samples go, then we've got patrons, Marcia Brady and Greg Brady. So if we look at Marcia Brady, let's go to Fulfillment Managed Patron Services. Marcia Brady has a patron role. Let's go right into the user. She's got a patron role in the medical library. This is not new, but I need to show the situation we have in order to show the functionality that we have. So she's associated only with the medical library. She can't loan an item from another library, and we're going to see that in a moment. So we've got, these are our staff users, and then we've got our patrons. So we got Marcia Brady. She is a patron in the medical library. And then we've got Greg Brady. And he's associated, edit. He's associated with the law library. Okay. So just to refresh everybody, if I were to take these two items, this one here, this barcode is in the law library. This barcode with a 2 at the end is in the medical library. If I try to loan, let me put that down here so we're all focused. We have that barcode and we have that barcode. And the one that ends in 2 is in the medical library. And this is in the law library. So if we try to loan this, for example, to Greg, it's not going to work because his patron role is in the law library. So if I were to come now and say manage patron services and choose Greg, and try to loan him something in the law library, I can't. User does not have a patron role. We saw that the user has a patron role, but because the patron role is for a different library, we can't. However, if we say 001, which is in the law library, where his patron role is, no problem. Okay, so that's just setting up the general situation. Now, we have other patrons with several items on loan. Let's go take a look at, for example, this is not Moshe, our colleague Moshe Schechter. This is another Moshe, Moshe ben Maimon. So let's look at Moshe ben Maimon for a moment. And now we're getting to the new parts. Moshe ben Maimon has permission to loan items from both the medical library and the law library. And if we look at his situation now, he has an item on loan from the law library, and he has lessons in Tanya from the medical library. So he has items on loan from both libraries, and he can do that because he has an active patron role for each of those. Now what we're going to see is restrictions of which staff users can see these. I'm now logged in as a staff user named Alicia Chen. Alicia Chen is seeing both the law library and the medical library. However, I'm going to sign out, and I'm going to sign in as a different staff user, Jethro Bodine. So that's going to be now let's see what's going to happen with him. Jethro Bodine comes along and also looks at Moshe ben Maimon and also goes to the managed fulfillment activities, only sees the medical library. A moment ago when Alicia was logged in, she saw the loan for the medical library and the law library. Jethro Bodine, this is the new development. Jethro Bodine, because his definitions are only for the medical library, he only sees the medical library. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. We're looking at Moshe ben Maimon. Let me do this. We're looking at Moshe ben Maimon, and we see one loan only for the medical library. This is an important thing what we're looking at now. When we logged in before, I'm going to sign out. I'm going to log in as everybody's favorite staff user, Alicia. And Alicia does the same exact flow. She gets Moshe ben Maimon. edit, manage fulfillment activities, and sees both. Again, I'm going to compare it. Here's Moshe Ben Maimon, only the medical library. This is Jethro Bodine, and sees the medical library only. Alicia sees them both, law library and medical library. I'm going to sign out from Alicia, and this time I'm going to go in as Ellie Mae. I'm not quite sure if that's the one. Let's see. Yep, that's it. And she's going to do the same. She'll take Moshe Ben Maimon. I'm going to stop in a moment and make sure this is clear to everybody because this is a big one. It might look small to those of you who have one library, but for those who have several libraries and really want to have that distinction, this is a big one. Manage fulfillment activities. Ellie Mae is only seeing the one loan in the law library. I'm going to go back to the screenshot from what we had before. And Jethro saw the loan in the medical library. I'm going to go to the PowerPoint to explain that a little more. Then we're going to stop and go to the pictures. Viewing patron loans restricted by library. That's where we're going to go to now. So we said Jethro, he's got his scopes all for the medical library. This is what we saw. Then we looked at Ellie Mae Clampett. All her scopes are for the law library. Then we have these patrons. I'm going to skip through these patrons to save everybody time. We already saw that. We saw we got these barcodes in different libraries. We saw that they can only loan according to their scope. I will skip this part about the circulation desks. And this is where we are now, viewing patron loans restricted by library. We saw that Alicia can see loans from all places because she has roles circulation desk operator and manager in both libraries. If we look again at Alicia, and we look at her roles, so she's got circulation desk manager in the law library, medical library, and agriculture library. Again, law library, medical library, agriculture library. So she's seeing loans from all of the libraries. This is what we just saw. Staff user Jethro Bodine can only see the loans in the medical. Ellie Mae Clampett can see only the law. This is just like the picture we took now in Paint. And then Ellie Mae Clampett only sees that. Jethro Bodine only sees that. Okay, I saw a chat came in. Let me go take a look here. And by the way, you can send in your chats and we'll never say who you are, so you can write anything. It's completely anonymous. I'll put the chat questions up here. That's one question. And here's another question. And that's all the questions I see. So here's question 1. And here's question 2. Okay, so someone asks, borrowing activity letter if run by job, and we'd like to terminate one library's letter but send all other libraries, will the XSLT terminate clause still work? I believe it will. Just to, how do you say, make everybody aware of what he's talking about or she's talking about, it's possible inside an XSL to have a terminate clause. I believe on the letters page, I've got an example of that. So the person is asking, now that the borrowing activity letter only has one library in it, can we use the terminate clause? I see no reason why not. I didn't try it. I usually, before I answer something definitive like that, I usually like to try it out first. I don't see why that wouldn't work. Because you've got only one library there. And if there's only one library, it should work. Give it a try. It sounds like a nice feature. That would be a way to say, don't print for a certain library. We know that we can do on the level of a patron which letters they opt in, opt out of. But you're talking about on the level of a library. So, okay, I did do an example of the terminate here, but we'll look for it another time. Oh, here it is. On hold shelf letter to not print for main library. Yeah, I believe this is where I've got the terminate clause, but we can look at that another time. There we are. Yeah. So yeah, you could do it something like this. This here you'd put your library, like I'm putting here the name of the circulation desk, and then terminate yes, and that's good. Okay. The next question. Patron loan items in their scope only. Would this in contradictions with the campus relationships? I see no reason why this would contradict with any any campus relationships. And this has also been something that's existed since the beginning. On this part with the campus relationships and the patron loans and their scopes, there's been no changes in years. Moshe, do you have anything to comment on this last note? Moshe Schechter, not Moshe Ben Maimon.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, the patron privileges are by their library. The staff privileges, as you've shown, are also by their library. If there's any aggregation of libraries that you'd like to create, such as patrons allowed to borrow from a number of libraries in a campus, or staff that is allowed to work in a number of libraries in campus, that would be done by aggregating privileges from different libraries. So give privileges from library A and B to the staff, and privileges from library A and B to the patrons, and they can loan and manage loans from both libraries if you'd like to create an aggregation of libraries for patrons and staff.
Okay, so let's see if there's any other chats and then go on. Nope, no other chats here. Okay. So let's take a look again as Alicia, because we want to see what else does Moshe Ben Maimon have. Okay, let's log in as Alicia, because if I log in as Ellie Mae, I'm limited. I don't know everything that Moshe Ben Maimon has, but Alicia is all powerful, we'll say here, and she can see all of the entities. So we're talking now about the attachments, the requests, the notes. They can all be defined now on the level of the library, which wasn't the case before. We'll show what we mean in a moment. So let's go take Moshe Ben. And we'll manage his fulfillment activities. Okay, so we already saw the loans, requests. So he's got a request in the medical library. If we were to come in now, sign out, Ellie Mae let's go take a look again at Moshe. Now, Ellie Mae, just to refresh ourselves, Ellie Mae is with the law library. And Moshe Ben Maimon has a request from the medical library. So she comes along. First of all, there's no indication here that there's requests, and she doesn't see the requests. However, she logs out, Jethro comes on in, He's associated with the medical library. He comes along, Moshe. Goes to the manage fulfillment activities. Does see the request. There's an indication here that there's a request, and does see the request. So like the loans, the requests also are limited by the scopes of the circulation desk operator, circulation desk manager, everything we mentioned at the beginning in the presentation. So we've got loans separated. Not only can the user only loan or make requests for certain libraries, but the staff user can only view them. Then we've got, let's go back to the upper level here. I'm going to stay in now as Jethro. Jethro is associated with the medical, right? I'm in as Jethro, yes. Now note here, if I want to create an attachment or a note, and I say add note, note, no pun intended, note that the note, or pay attention that the note now has an owner field. And if I'm Moshe Ben Maimon, I can only have medical library as the owner of this note, and I can only view ones which are the owner medical library. If I was to go in here now, sign out, and this is the case for the blocks, the attachments. What else, Moshe? The blocks, the attachments, all of those entities there. They're all listed in the PowerPoint as well. If we go in now as Ellie Mae, and we do the same thing, let's go right here. Boom. So here, Ellie Mae sees a note. He left his sweater at the circulation desk. With the law library, if she adds a note, she can only do it for the law library. Alicia, on the other hand, due to time, I'm showing this only for the notes. As they say in Latin, canal, it's the same for the fines and fees, the blocks, the attachments. You can only view those that you belong to. We're going to go in as Alicia now. And we're going to see two things. We'll see that she sees both notes, and she can create on the level of the institution or the library. So let's go get Moshe Ben again. Okay, so notes. So Alicia sees them both. He left his sweater at the circulation desk of the law library, and he needs to fix his email for the medical library. If Alicia goes to add a note, she can choose the institution and all of these libraries because of her scopes. Okay, it's 8:58 local time, which means there's less than 2 minutes left. So I don't want to start another topic, but I'll stress all of these, the blocks, the notes, the fines and fees, they all have owners. This is new. Because they have owners, it's possible to restrict which staff users can see them. And everything is in those PowerPoints. Let me see if there's any final chats or questions from anybody. Okay, Moshe, do you want to add anything before we close?
Yeah, so just two short comments. So I'd just like to emphasize these blocks that you're showing right now. Obviously, this new ability to define the scope of a block to a library not only means that operators from that library will be the only ones that can see it, it also, of course, means that that block only affects loans from that library. So a block at the law library will not block loans from the medical library and vice versa. The scope is functional. It not only restricts the view of the block. So just like to emphasize that. And it's, of course, a major difference from what was possible before now. You mentioned the fines. I'd just like to emphasize that again. So users from libraries don't see fines owned by other libraries. And just one last comment. Those of you that may have crossed your mind, Joel was showing requests and how operators cannot see requests from other libraries. So just a little comment about that. As you know, requests in Alma are title level. So the owner of a request is actually the library that is currently handling that request or can handle this request. So if you have a request that has copies in multiple libraries, until that request is processed, all these libraries are considered owner of that request, and we're able to see that. Once one of the libraries grabs that item and starts processing that through transit to hold shelf, then only the library that is currently managing that item will be considered the owner of that request. So it depends on the stage in the life cycle of the request, who would be considered the owner of that request.
Okay, thanks, Moshe. Okay, so we'll be posting the recording of this, and we hope to see you in the future roadmap and theme seminars. Have a nice day, everybody. Bye-bye.